You're listening to Sudbury News Talk.
I want to show you something.
Stand by. On the morning shift.
Anything
could happen.
Sudbury News Talk on the morning shift.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Sudbury News Talk. On the morning shift, I'm AJ Walsh. I'm glad to be here with you. We're thankful that you're with us on this January 24, first month of the year, 24th day in the 24th year. Interesting dates. Dates are interesting. Numbers are interesting. So thankful that you're with us. And it's going to be a great show today, as usual. Many are wondering what the show is going to be on. Well, it's not hard to know. Yesterday, when some breaking news came out, I pretty much knew what the show was going to be on today. We got that, and we have local headlines, which that's one of them. Breaking news that the Supreme Court of Canada ruled that the emergency measures that our federal government took were unjustified and unconstitutional. To which Chrystia Freeland came right away and said, we are going to appeal that decision. So more stay tuned, but we'll kind of pick it apart a little bit today and talk about that. Many people wanted to forget what happened there, and knowing that there's still a lot of court proceedings that are going on from the supposed, I guess, if you want to take some local media with the quotations, supposed Freedom Convoy, as they call it, if you want to word it that way, or just Freedom Convoy. There were truckers and other people. The truckers started a kind of a protest, and a lot of people jumped on board and thought this cause was worthy of showing our mistrust or distaste in the government's measures over the last 4 years at that time and how they were handling things. And so many people thought they were way above, what they needed to be. And they kicked back, they pushed back. And we'll have an interview with two young men who actually made a documentary. I think they're just wrapping it up, or it's made. I'm not sure. But we'll have an interview with them coming up right after local weather, local news, local sports. And so that'll be a little bit of a deep dive today, trying to make sense of what just happened yesterday. And so we look forward to your comments. So we are live at CKLU 96.7 FM, cklu.ca. Click on the Radio Player Canada app. You can stream us. You can download it, take us with you, and listen to us anywhere, anytime on your favorite device. We are Sudbury's campus and community radio station. We've been around since 1984. Started out in a little trailer at the LU campus on Ramsey Lake Road, and now we are located in the old Telegraph building, part of the new MacEwan School of Architecture, part of Laurentian University. So we are campus and community radio. So if you wish to help support it, we only rely on your support. You go to cklu.ca and you can buy something or just make a monetary contribution to keep the lights on. If you want to go over and above and volunteer and give of your time, if you don't have the monetary resources, or you just have a passion to help with local radio, you can email gm at cklu.ca. That's Rob's email. And if you have an idea for a show as well, same thing. You don't have to do a live stream like I'm doing. You could just be on the radio or just have an audio podcast. Take the audio from your radio show and make a podcast out of it. Then you don't have to go and buy all this equipment stuff like we have here. Times two. And that will contribute greatly. Another way to contribute to this show is by emailing us, transferring us to our email at sudburynews@gmail.com. It's didn't get much sleep last night, hoping I could just run on fumes this morning. But we're gonna have a great show regardless. We're gonna get into things. Make sure to like, share, subscribe, follow us at facebook.com/Sudbury News, youtube.com/Sudbury News, where we are live streaming at the moment. But mainly, comment. This is your show on your station. This is meant to be a conversation where you're able to be part of it. So that's the idea of it. We're able to chime in on the stuff we're talking about, and it adds greatly to the show. So without further ado, let's dive right in. We'll start off with a little bit of weather, some sports, local news headlines. We'll be back then after that with your comments, and then a deep dive into the Supreme Court ruling yesterday. So we'll be back right after this. Stay tuned. It's going to be a great show. And Sudbury weather brought to you by SudburyWeather.ca. Currently it's -7 out there, -7. It feels like -12. Today we can expect cloudy, 30% chance of flurries this morning with a risk of freezing drizzle. Yeah, there's that whole rain idea happening now that the temperatures are getting a little bit more moderate. High of -1 today, and with the wind chill -14 this morning, but this afternoon -5. Tonight, cloudy, risk of freezing drizzle again late this evening and overnight. Wind will be very low. The low will be -3, the wind chill near -7. And then Thursday, cloudy with 30% chance of drizzle in the afternoon. Risk of freezing drizzle in the morning. 15-kilometer wind. High of +1. Wind chill -7 in the morning. And and that's it. So it's going to be +1. I don't know what it's going to be at the wind chill. Probably just -2 or 3. And look at your week long. Again, periods of drizzle. High of 1 Thursday, 30% chance. 60% chance of snow. High of 1 on Friday. And high of 2 and cloudy on Saturday. And then gets a little cooler. -8. And mix of sun and cloud on Sunday. 30% chance of flurries. -7 on Monday, -1 on Tuesday with a 30% chance of flurries. So the only, showing of any bit of sun here is on Sunday. It's a mix of sun and cloud. Other than that, we got cloudy and got precipitation, possibly freezing drizzle. So we'll have to stay safe out there. We finally have a current satellite photo, which just shows a lot of dark clouds. Almost every single spot of the screen is dark clouds with the potential of precipitation. That's your Sudbury weather, brought to you by SudburyWeather.ca. We'll be back with a little bit of a sports report, local headlines, your comments, and much more right after this. And your Sudbury 5 are in action on Friday in Windsor. And then they're coming back home for a Sunday game right here in Sudbury. And the tip-off is 2 p.m. So they're going to be in Windsor on Friday night. Tip-off is 7 p.m. I know you can get the game. You just Google how to get the new league that they're in. You can watch them, I think. That's how much I know about that. But anyways, check it out. See if there's a way to watch the game. But you can definitely watch the game on Sunday when they come into town. Tip off 2 p.m. Get your tickets now at greatersudbury.ca/tickets. And get out and support your Sudbury 5. And other sports news, the other team that plays at the Sudbury Arena is the Sudbury Wolves. They'll be in action tomorrow night in North Bay, taking on the Battalion. Now they're neck and neck in the Central Division. And then the following night, the North Bay Battalion are in town. So Friday night here in Sudbury. These two games are very crucial because they're both at the top of the Central Division. And this rivalry definitely is taking on a it's going up to a whole other level this year with them being at the top of the Central Division. They're not the only ones either. You have the Brantford Battalion, you have Mississauga Steelheads. They're all up there. It's a tight race for that number one spot in that division. So this could be a crucial series if they can get the 2 wins. That would definitely be a game changer in terms of the standings. But what a game it's going to be! So to get out and watch it, get your tickets. crittersudbury.ca/tickets, or you can get them at the box office. But the Friday night games are packed, so I wouldn't leave it to the last minute to get my tickets for the Sudbury Wolves. And there's a media advisory that there's going to be a media conference tomorrow at the new Sudbury Shopping Center. There's an announcement going to be made concerning the Sudbury Cyclones, the professional soccer team that will be playing here in Sudbury, along with the an announcement of Greater Sports, what their plans are for 2024. So we'll have more on that tomorrow as the information becomes available. But that's your Sudbury Sports, brought to you by SudburySports.ca. We'll be back with news headlines, your comments, and much more. Stay with us. Yeah, so good morning, everyone. We got quite a few people already jumping on bright and early. Debbie, first to the Facebook party. Good morning. You got a nice smiley emoji there. Much appreciated. And Debbie, federal court. Okay, yes. So I said Supreme Court, so I could be wrong on what I was announcing earlier today. But anyways, thank you for that, and good morning. Liette, good morning from Collingwood. Yeah, with that, I can just get the headline up here anyways. Okay, no, that's not the one. Here's the one here. There we go. Yeah, federal court rules. The invocation against Freedom Convoy was unreasonable and unjustified. So that's the headline we're going to be breaking down today. Not Supreme Court, for sure. Federal court. I guess if it keeps getting appealed and whatever, it'll eventually make its way there, right? I guess that's the plan at some point. Good morning, Vin. Thanks for being with us. Beauty win for Canadians, for sure. We'll be talking more about that coming up. Good morning. Victory at all costs. Victory in spite of all fear. Victory, however long and hard the road may be, for without victory, there is no survival. Thank you so much for that, Melinda. That's true. We have to continue to be on guard. You know how our national anthem includes those words of being on guard. Well, what the heck does that even mean, being on guard? If you let your guard down, things, you're opening up to things happening and forces that have other ideas in mind other than things that are for your benefit, right? So, Maurice, good morning. Smiley emoji. Thanks. Much appreciated. Belinda, watching Chrystia Freeland shaken up over the court's decision. Priceless. Yeah, that was an interesting one. Yeah, she was, again, talking down. She usually talks down when she speaks to everybody. But she's letting herself be clear and all those things in her statement yesterday. Let me be very clear. We're going to appeal this and all that stuff. I have a hard time listening to her. I have a hard time listening to Justin Trudeau. I have a hard time listening to people that don't have my best interest at heart when they speak. I just have a hard time with that. It may be bringing back childhood traumas, but it is what it is. Denise, morning and blessings from Espanola. Smiley text there. Appreciate it. Leon, Trudeau will not be defeated with the Freedom Convoy. The pipelines and plastic rulings from court, repealing each of them. A true dictator that he is. Appreciate it. I know a lot of people share your point of view. Jerome, there you are. No notification on the feed. The best conversation in Ontario. Good morning, freedom-loving Sudbury news hounds. Yeah, no, I don't think we are out there anymore. I don't think Facebook promotes the show like it does. You know, whenever you follow something and they have a live on Facebook, it's supposed to like let you know whenever someone you follow is live. It just says, "Hey, these guys are live," and then you can say, do I want to see them or no? But Facebook can say, you know what? We're not going to do that for these people, but we're going to do that for these people. So that's an interesting place to be in. I'm not sure if it's politically motivated or what the reasons for it. They just do. And there's a good example of it. Jerome saying he wasn't able to be notified of the show. Leond? Oh, so it's just kind of speaking to each other here. That's great. There's a YouTube video being shared by Jess. Just let everyone know, if you share a video in the chat, I'm not able to play it on the show. If you're hoping that I would play it, I can't, but others can as they're watching, or afterwards someone can go on and play the video. Okay, and then there's the a link to a city, to a city link to get involved. City Hall link. So that's great too. Thanks, Jess. Much appreciated for sharing those links. Yeah, I agree. The halls are empty. No real backbone. When you say halls are empty, I think you mean people getting out there and having their voices heard. And I think we're seeing more and more of that. I think we're seeing some grassroots movements, and we'll be talking about one big one today in the ruling that was made in the federal courts, for sure. Listening to Freeland is like listening to a Yoko Ono album. Oh my goodness. Not sure if it's reached that particular point, but I see what you mean. Yeah. Debbie says, I'm not seeing all comments. So that's interesting. Not sure why. I'm doing my best to get them up on the screen and read them. At least for now, you'll be able to see them all and hear them until we get right into everything. I get Facebook notification of the show most mornings. That's Miles Shields. Much appreciated. At least this morning you did. So thanks for that. Appreciate it. Just I've heard from many people that they don't. I know I don't, because I follow the page as well. So maybe it just knows that I'm the owner of the page and it just doesn't bother. Sometimes it did, though. It used to send me, hey, Sudbury News is live, but that hasn't happened for a long time. So Jess also says it's a link to Greater Sudbury website to volunteer. That's right. Because yesterday we announced that Greater Sudbury has a new initiative to look after, Volunteer Sudbury basically isn't around anymore. And so the city's kind of taken it up with the United Way and the city kind of taking up that baton, if you will. So thanks for sharing that. If you want to volunteer, we'll also have more to come in terms of how to get involved and how to know where to volunteer with another resource as well coming up very shortly. Good morning, Sudbury campers. That's Brian. Thanks for being with us, Brian. Chris, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Hope you are all well for sure. You get notifications every morning. Cool. Excellent. Thanks for letting us know that. At least they're working for some people. That's awesome. Monique says, not seeing all comments and no notification on Facebook either. So you didn't get a notification. Some people do. Some people don't. Who knows? Maybe it's a new setting. They just came out and said, hey, you got to put it in your settings, which pages you follow if you want to get notifications. Maybe. I have no idea. I don't know why that would be. Some people get them and some people don't. If you don't get notifications, just unfollow and refollow. Oh, there you go. It's a good way to do it. And a lot of people who are on the show already that follow, it doesn't show me that you're following. So according to Facebook, you're actually not following. Let's see if I can get an example of this here. So if we go to yesterday's show, let's say, I apologize if the sound comes
You're
up.
listening
Yep,
to
I knew that would happen. So we'll wait for it to load. So here we go. So we got, okay, yeah. I'm logged in as myself here because that's the only way it works. Anyways, I'll show you guys at one point, sometime when I'm able to. A lot of just technical things making it. This Facebook does not make it easy to do the show. I'll tell you that too. I have to log in as my personal for some things in order to play. I can't have it on Sudbury News. Only some features are available on my personal one that's not available on Sudbury News in order to do the show. So anyways, what I was going to show you is when you click the likes and the likes and whatever, and it shows you the list of people and it says whether they're following you or not. Well, most people aren't following me, and it's all you guys. It's most of the people that are on right now says you've only been invited. You're not following the page. So the numbers that we have, like 6,600 followers, that number isn't correct because people are following us, but it doesn't show up. Like Facebook, I don't know why, but it just doesn't show. And I was going to prove that to you right now. I was just going to show you. It tells me whether you're following or not. And the odd person, it says, yeah, they're following you. And most of you that are here commenting right now just says that you've been invited and that you're not following the page. So I don't know why that is. And I know that our numbers should be way higher than 6,600 followers for sure. There's no doubt about that. So thank you very much, everyone, for commenting. We appreciate that. Continue the comments rolling. But if we don't dive in right now, we might not have time for the show, which ended up happening yesterday. So we want to make sure we have enough time for talking about the federal court decision yesterday. That the headline said, again, Emergencies Act, federal courts rule invocation against Freedom Convoy unreasonable and unjustified. So, and the federal government will be appealing that decision. So we'll have more on that right after we talk about some of our local headlines. Okay, here you go. So the federal government announces a 2-year cap on international student admissions, right? So we know we talk about immigration and stuff on the show and how it relates to the housing crisis and possibly the homelessness crisis in Canada. And so federal government puts a 2-year cap on international student admissions. They only make a 2-year cap. The new visas for international students will be slashed by more than 1/3 this year as the federal government tries to slow a rapid increase in temporary residents. That has put immense pressure on Canada's housing system. That's from Sudbury.com. Now, CBC wouldn't come out and say, I remember CBC talking about the housing crisis, and they said, there's no link with the immigration and our housing crisis. We just want to make that clear. Well, maybe immigration and student visas are two different things, but I think they're linked because I know myself that an avenue to come in and get citizenship in Canada is to come as a student first. And then after that, then you apply for, becoming a citizen, right? That's part of the pathway. So if we, anyways, and then I find out there's been a lot of schools that are just bogus schools that are taking the tuition of these students in these visas, and they don't even get an education. They're just bogus schools that have popped up, and they're, people are getting rich off this. I hope W5 or whatever looks into that, because that's insane. If that's been going on, that many students coming into Canada and applying for schools that really don't even offer education just to get their money. That's crazy. That should never happen in a country like Canada. That's third world stuff. That's why people come from other countries to get an education in Canada, because that kind of thing's not supposed to happen here. But as we see our standards and the bar is being lowered and lowered and lowered as we become, I think the goal is from outside sources that we become a third world country as we see the collapse of our Western civilization as we know it. These are some of those signs, right? You start seeing things that take place in other kind of not as established countries or different world countries like second world, third world countries happening here. But anyways, federal government announced for 2 years is going to be a bit of a cap on students coming in. Well, how will that affect the local schools around here, right? So Cambrian, okay. So let's see what Cambrian's president says about that. I didn't think it was so far up here. We're just looking at our news aggregator on Sudbury.news, where you can get all the local news aggregated into one location. Cambrian College president says it can weather restrictions on international student permits. A federal government restriction we just talked about on the number of international students allowed to study in Canada has some colleges saying foul. However, the president of Cambrian College is offering reassurances that it has enough money in its reserve to deal with the potential impact. And I can tell you, if it wasn't for the international visa program of the federal government for students, Cambrian College would be in dire straits, as would Laurentian University. I mean, they're in dire straits already. They went bankrupt and they're just coming out of bankruptcy, even with international students coming at that rate. That shows you something about how Laurentian University was managed before. But now we'll see if that'll affect Laurentian University, right? Interesting there. Good morning, Isaiah. Thanks for joining us. Did you hear Trudeau's use of the Emergency Act was unconstitutional? Yes, we did. And yes, we will be talking about that. And we have two young people that were making a documentary about the movement that we'll have an interview with them towards the end of the show. So we really appreciate that. So Sioux College said that they will lose 30% of their ad revenues. That's interesting. For sure. So we really appreciate your comments. Keep them coming in. And I'll do my best to get them up on the screen. So Sudbury.com has their morning start your day segment here. And they give a couple good stories here. Still no updates from developer on Old Paris Street Hospital. Right? You know, the Rainbow Hospital, the old General Hospital, the old St. Joe's Hospital. It's sitting there in a decrepit sort of state with some paint on it. And there's still no word from Panoramic Properties when it comes to the old hospital building they own on Paris Street. On August 8th, 2023, the Niagara Falls-based company issued a media release touting the property as the future site of 3 buildings, including a 20-story condominium, a 16-story urban loft rental building, and a 12-story retirement complex. The media release included a quote from Panoramic Properties president Angelo Botera, in which he said he looked forward to working with the new mayor, Paul Lefebvre, city council, and staff upon submission of a required official plan and zoning applications in 2023. Said now, almost a month into 2024, no such submissions have been discussed by the planning committee of the city council, where they would, show up to seek approval. The committee's next meeting, scheduled for January 29th, does not include these applications either. So what was all of that about then? Why is there nothing moving forward with that? It's at a stalemate. Is it zoning issues? What is it? Like, what's the hold up with this? So we wondering what's going to happen in the future. But in the meantime, what you could do just to kind of give, just to get wake up a bit, if you're in a bit of a cloud or whatever these days, and you feel, we live in a strange world, and you just gotta like reboot. The police are putting on their annual Sudbury polar bear plunge. If you just want to shock your system, Greater Sudbury Police members are warming up in preparation for their annual polar bear plunge into the freezing waters of Ramsey Lake. The event is all set to take place on March the 2nd on Ramsey Lake boat launch. And the event will be in support of law enforcement, torch run, and the polar plunge for Special Olympics. An awareness event was held January 23rd to let organizers and participants get ready for the fundraiser, which includes participation from Greater Sudbury Police, Greater Sudbury Police Association, Special Olympics, and Hot 93.5 Radio. One of the key supporters in the event is the Greater Sudbury Police Service Chief Paul Pedersen, who told the gathering that Special Olympics is the charity of choice for the police chiefs of Ontario. He said the polar plunge was revived last year as the community was coming out of the pandemic. Pedersen said organizers were eager to see how successful it could be. So, if you're one of these people that don't mind, diving into ice cold water, this is your chance to make it happen in support of Special Olympics. So good on the Sudbury Police for putting that on. Now, the headline as well for the Good Morning Stories to Start Your Day segment from Sudbury.com. Federal Use of Emergencies Act was unreasonable, judge rules. All right. So their take on the story, again, I just want to let you know how sometimes political, media can be political, and you can kind of see where they're at by how they write stories. But anyways, the judge says that it was unreasonable for the Liberal government to use the Emergencies Act to quell, quote unquote, Freedom Convoy. That's what that means when you when you write things like that. It's kind of saying the supposed, or the not really real, but we'll call it that for now. Freedom Convoy protests in the National Capital and at key border points 2 years ago. In a decision released yesterday, federal court Justice Richard Mosley says invocation of the act led to infringement on constitutional rights. So switching gears to the Epoch Times now and their coverage of it. So Emergencies Act, federal court rules invocation against Freedom Convoy unreasonable, unjustified. A federal court judge has declared that the invocation of the Emergencies Act in response to the Freedom Convoy. See, there's no quotes around the Freedom Convoy on the Epoch Times report, but there is on the Sudbury.com one, because they're just saying it's called that. So we're not going to minimalize it by putting quotes around it. Protest was unreasonable, and they put quotes around unreasonable because that is an actual quote from the judge, right? And that related regulations infringed on Canadians' charter rights. Richard Mosley, who was the judge, says, I have concluded that the decision to issue the proclamation does not bear all hallmarks of reasonableness, justification, transparency, and intelligibility. It was not justified in relation to the relevant factual and legal constraints that were required to be taken into consideration. The judge said, while he had initially believed the Emergencies Act invocation was justified in response to an unacceptable breakdown of public order, quote unquote, arguments by the Canadian Constitutional Foundation and Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms led him to see otherwise. Well, isn't that interesting? Right? You'd think as a judge, you would be pretty up on constitutional rights, but these organizations who their specialty is these rights, our constitutional rights, were able to show him, wait a minute here, that's against our constitutional rights. So because of these and other organizations like them, they were able to prove to the judge and show that, yes, this is indeed unconstitutional. Two civil liberty organizations had argued in court that the Liberal government did not meet the legal threshold to invoke the legislation in response to the protest. They supported lawsuits filed by 5 plaintiffs who participated in the protest, 2 of whom had their bank accounts frozen as a result of the Emergencies Act, which to me, if that's not unconstitutional, I don't know what is. The Freedom Convoy protest was started in response to a mandate requiring COVID-19 vaccination for truck drivers crossing the Canada-US border and resulted in encampments of trucks in the nation's capital. The protest evolved into a larger movement against the pandemic mandates and restrictions, with similar protests being held at several Canadian-US border crossings. In response to the protests, the federal government ultimately invoked the Emergencies Act on Valentine's Day of all days, February 14th, which gave law enforcement expanded powers to arrest demonstrators, freeze bank accounts of some protesters, and require towing companies to remove protesters' vehicles from Ottawa's downtown core. Like, they were mandated to use their company-owned vehicles to go in and do this as like a government service kind of thing, the tow truck companies. I'm sure they were paid a good penny for it as well, so that way they didn't complain too much. This latter power was not used, according to evidence presented during the Public Order Emergencies Commission. And that would mean the towing companies being used, I guess. Other tools available. In this decision, Justice Mosley wrote that the Emergencies Act was meant to be a tool of last resort, and Ottawa could not invoke it because it, quote, it is convenient or because it may work better than other tools at their disposal or available to the provinces. While the judge agreed with Ottawa's claim that the situation was, quote unquote, critical and required an urgent resolution by governments, he did not agree with the conclusion that other laws in Canada could not have been dealt with the protesters, pointing out that the provincial governments of Quebec and Ontario had been able to deal with the protests on their own, in their own provinces. For these reasons, I conclude that there was no national emergency justifying the invocation of the Emergencies Act, and the decision to do so was therefore unreasonable and ultra vires, beyond lawful authority, is the Latin, I guess. So it was beyond lawful authority, he wrote. Justice Mosley wrote that the invocation of the Emergencies Act was infringed on Charter Sections 2B, or not to be, couldn't resist that one. Charter Section 2B, which deals with the freedom of thought, belief, opinion, and expression, and Section 8, which deals with the right to be secured from unreasonable seizure. In relation to Section 8, the judge says Ottawa's decision to freeze the bank accounts of some protesters was, quote unquote, not minimally impairing, as the regulations applied everywhere in Canada, including in areas where protests were not happening, and because there was less impairing alternatives available to Ottawa. So again, right? Way overreaching. Didn't have to close someone's bank account in BC to deal with the problem in Ottawa. Didn't have to do that. A lot of these people were already gone from Ottawa, but because they participated in it, or they were suspected to maybe be one of the leaders, their bank accounts were frozen. Had nothing to do with the emergency so-called situation at the time. They're just showing their muscle. Justice Mosley said the federal government's economic orders violated protesters' charter rights by permitting unreasonable search and seizure of the financial information and designated persons and the freezing of their bank account and credit card accounts. They even went after cryptocurrency, the thing we thought was so untouchable. And got all the money that was donated from other people too and took that money. The judge said the applicants had established that Ottawa's decision to invoke the act was unreasonable and led to infringement on charter rights not justified under Section 1 the section of the Charter guarantees Canadians the rights and freedoms to set out in it, or guarantees Canadians the rights and freedoms set out in it, subject only to such reasonable limits prescribed by law as can be demonstrably demonstrably justified in a free and democratic society. I do have glasses, by the way. They're just way over on the other side of the room. Like, I mean, prescription glasses. These are not prescription. I'm going to start using them. How about that? So the reactions is, we know Chrystia Freeland basically said they're going to appeal this. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre said on social media X that the judge ruled Prime Minister Justin Trudeau broke the highest law in the land by invoking the Emergencies Act. He caused the crisis by dividing people. Then he violated the charter rights to illegally suppress citizens. As a prime minister, he will unite the country for freedom and not divide. So it goes on more here. We can have more on this tomorrow. I want to get to these interviews, however. These are taken from the host of American Thought Leaders in from the Epoch Times. But yeah, let's listen. These are two young people that have a documentary that they're going to be releasing on this very subject. So we'll be back with more right after this.
What you're saying is something that was actually genuinely grassroots to the point where it was having trouble staying organized in the first place because it was so grassroots, but being portrayed perhaps as being some kind of nefarious conspiracy against the government.
Oh, that's so incredibly accurate. It's wild how accurate that actually is. As we're driving across the country, we're embedded with the group. We're speaking with the quote unquote organizers, which is debatable in and of itself, because at the end of the day, I don't know if we could say who the organizers were to this point in time, because the honest truth is it was so incredibly grassroots, and no one individual could have come up with this or orchestrated this. And as we're driving across the country, we're realizing that these guys basically have one plan, and it's to drive to Ottawa, and that's it, and that's actually it. So we're like, okay, maybe you should start to come up with a plan as to how you land this, and make sure that you're communicating with OPP, with the Ottawa Police Department, with politicians, start talking to some lawyers, start talking to different groups. And it was so beautiful how so many people came together around this movement, grassroots, because it started with the truckers, and then the Canadians jumped on board and they said, you know what? No, we stand with the truckers. And then the lawyers and the doctors who've been fighting for this from day number one said, wow, there's actually a platform for us to stand on and speak to. So they got on board. And then the police officers who've been let go because they're unvaccinated, the military who'd been let go because they were unvaccinated, said, you know what? We can bring our structure to this movement. We can help. And everybody started to come together, and it was so grassroots, and it worked because of that. But yeah, it was a wild story to follow, because as cameramen, we're trying to think, okay, we want to follow the story. Where's the story? Okay, is this the story? Okay, is this the story? Is this the story? Like, who are we supposed to be following here? And the honest truth is we couldn't. And on that note, we the very first day on the road, we put together a website, because Andrew and I realized that there's no way that we're going to capture this movement with our cameras. So we put together a website and put up a WeTransfer link, and we asked Canada to support this story, and asked them to send in their footage of the movement, whether it be cell phone footage on overpasses as the trucks drove by, or cinematographers that were out there with their cameras, or drone pilots that were shooting. And at certain points in time, we were getting 60,000 hits a day to that website, dropping us footage. And we had a team back in Calgary that was sorting all of that footage and storing it and allocating it in different folders. It was a huge operation behind the scenes, and we really, at the end of the day, can't even take credit for this documentary. We can take credit for editing it, but this is truly a story by Canadians for Canadians, and we couldn't be prouder.
So some serious crowdsourcing going on here of footage. So do you have an estimate of how many hours of footage you ultimately got between all these uploads?
Hundreds and hundreds of hours of footage. I would say breaching over into the thousands would be likely. The exciting stuff is the behind the scenes captures we were able to get. Some of the behind the scenes boardrooms, seeing the humanity of some of these individuals that were really just leadership was thrust upon them in a not in an ideal situation. That's what I go back to of it being a human story. Like the subsequent chapters you're going to watch there's a lot of sleep deprivation, there's a lot of paranoia, there's a lot of people leading with their hearts, but not a lot of calculation, and that in itself is very fun to cover.
And so what they were protesting, right? Like it wasn't just nothing. A lot of people lost their jobs. It was a real thing. A lot of people, because they didn't want to take an experimental solution to a problem that could very well put their health at risk. This is what they were up against, right? And we just find out recently exactly that was the case, right? So this just came out. We wanted to talk about this on the show before today, but this is last week's news already, and we should have been talking about this, but it kind of goes along with the reason why there were people pushing back on what our government was doing, right? Because a lot of people knew this information already all the way back then.
It's also developing right now. Florida's Surgeon General says for us to stop getting the COVID vaccine.
Fox 35's Hannah McKenzie is joining us live in the Alert Center tonight. So, Hannah, he says what's in the Moderna and Pfizer vaccines is a problem.
Yeah, Luann, Florida Surgeon General Dr. Latipo says he has safety concerns pertaining to the discovery of billions of DNA fragments found per dose in the Pfizer and Moderna COVID vaccines. And he says those concerns have not been addressed by the FDA or the CDC. Dr. Latipo says if the risks of DNA integration with COVID vaccines cannot be addressed, then the vaccines aren't appropriate for use in humans. He says he sent letters to the heads of the FDA and the CDC specifically questioning how this would impact humans in three main areas: healthy human genes being transformed into cancerous cells, chromosomal instability, and how the integration could affect unintended parts of the body, such as the heart, brain, lungs, even the injection site itself. We asked local Dr. Michael Sparks to weigh in. Dr. Sparks telling us with the state surgeon general saying one thing and the FDA another, health providers are left stuck in the middle.
New things are scary. If we look back historically, we've introduced new medications that we were told were very safe, were going to be very effective, and they turned out not to be safe or effective, and they caused a lot of birth defects, things like that. So it's not unreasonable to be worried about things that are new, and that's where the research comes into play.
So yeah, justified, right? So it isn't all that out in left field, looking like these are the fringe. I think fringe minority were one of the things that the Prime Minister called the group of people that had concerns and that were, going to Ottawa to express those concerns, basically. Like, why? Like, what? Why are you forcing everyone to do this? What's the means to the end here? What's it all for? There's concerns we have. We're all losing our jobs over this. This is the only solution to the problem. And if we don't do it, we lose our jobs, right? So this wasn't just a bunch of truckers saying, hey, what do we want to do for the weekend? Let's just go occupy Ottawa, right? So a little bit more of that interview with these two young individuals who made this documentary on the Freedom Convoy.
So what would you say, you mentioned a little bit earlier that, for example, the soldiers and police and first responders that were let go because they weren't able to follow the rules for whatever reason, joined on. So they had something on their minds. But what would you say were the key reasons or the key points of why people joined? And so, of course, we have this question. Some people joined because they simply, didn't want to get vaccinated or couldn't get vaccinated with COVID vaccines. Other people did it, and this comes through in there, that simply they just didn't like the idea of being forced to do something like this. What else was there?
I think the foremost reason would be in support of freedom of choice, freedom of thought. Above and beyond that, I think a lot of people were brought to this movement for a sense of purpose in and of itself. Over the past couple of years, I know I can speak. I can't speak for all of Canada, but I can speak for myself. I never lost my job, but even without losing my job, even without losing my security, there was a feeling of helplessness. There was a feeling of hopelessness, and there was a feeling of depression, as we're told over and over and over again that we're just shutting down for 2 weeks. Oh, it's just two more weeks. We'll flatten the curve. Okay, 8 weeks and 60% vaccination. We're shooting for 60% vaccination. Oh, okay. Well, I went and got my vaccine because I was told that at 60% we would go back to normal. Oh, now it's 70%. What did I just do that for? Now 80%. Now 85. Now 90. When is this ever going to end? And I think that type of gaslighting broke down Canada in a way that we've never been broken down before in our history. And I think that one of the biggest reasons why the people came together in the millions to stand for freedom was purpose, was to stand for something. Because the old Western saying goes, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. And I think that's been a hard lesson that Canadians have been learning. And it was incredible to watch people to come together with their own strengths and support a movement together with one solid purpose to support freedom and freedom of choice. To watch the soldiers set up camps in minus 30 degrees Celsius outside of the war monument to guard it, and to stand in loyalty to what Canada stands for people to stand outside of Parliament and make sure that everyone was safe, to the mass groups that were shoveling the sidewalks of Ottawa, making sure that no one would slip on the ice, to the groups that picked up garbage every single night to make sure that it was cleaner than when they first came. Everybody played a role, and everybody had their purpose, and it was beautiful to see. It was truly astoundingly beautiful to see everybody come together and find joy and happiness and unity in purpose. And I think that's probably the biggest thing, aside from a support for freedom of thought.
So very eloquently put. I think they made the points of what was going on in Canada, why people were there. It just was what it was, and now the federal court ruled that it was unconstitutional to invoke the Emergencies Act. The federal government, it will be appealing. We'll have more, obviously, on how that's all going to unfold. And we just want to know, is our government above the law? You know what I mean? Above the Constitution? Can they do things over and above what this country was founded on in terms of laws? Well, I guess stay tuned for that, because the question's still out. We see so many examples of, yes, they are. They're able to shut down a lot of things and not be held accountable for so many things that, you just wonder if there's any accountability anymore, and whether or not there are people in this country who are above the law. So that was the show for today, which is January the 24th. Thanks for being with us today, everyone. We'll have more on this and much, much more. Nick just texted and said she'll be on the show tomorrow. So, and Nick Gervais will be joining us as well. Have a great and wonderful Tuesday, everyone. Wednesday. I might have said Tuesday earlier as well. It's Wednesday, and have a wonderful hump day. We'll be back tomorrow on Thursday with the Nick Gervais. Stay tuned now for Earshot Daily, everyone. Have a wonderful day and stay safe. And if you're driving, definitely stay safe with the freezing drizzle that we could possibly be having out there. So take care, everyone. Ciao.
This is Sudbury News Talk on the morning shift.